Hey there! Welcome to Leathercraft with Kay Orton. I've been doing leathercraft most of my life. I learned leathercraft in 4-H when I was a kid. I've been a leathercraft leader for about 45 years now. I continue to learn leathercraft all the time through the Colorado Saddle Makers Association, where we have workshops and seminars that help teach us each year. You learn leathercraft from everybody that teaches you. Everyone does it a little bit different, and that's okay. Listen to everyone, how they teach you, and then use those techniques that work the best for you. There are a lot of tools around. Use the tools that you have, learn what you like, and then when you buy new tools, buy the tool that makes the impression that you want, and make sure it's a good quality tool so you're not wasting your time. I hope you enjoy leathercraft. And now I think it's time for us to get started. Today we're going to learn a little bit about inverted carving and silhouette carving. We're going to start with silhouette carving. I'll show you a picture. Silhouette carving is where the area you want to have in the design is backgrounded in, and it makes a silhouette that way. And so we will go forward and show you how to do this. We're going to make a little piece of leather. This is inverted carving, which is once you make your swivel knife cuts, then you will bevel it to the inside, where on regular carving you're going to be beveling on the outside of your project. So a little different take on it, has a little different look, and is kind of fun, but it's really good to do this project after you've learned to carve, because you get a lot of practice doing beveling and backgrounding, which is, they're really good traits to have, and if you can get good at those, then you can make just about anything look good too. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to dampen our leather down. Now I have had this leather damp in a plastic bag for a while, and so it has gone back to its natural color pretty much, and it feels kind of cool, and I can tell that it's damp, but it needs a little bit more, and so we're going to spray a little bit of water on it. I'll spray part here. You can spray it and dampen it like that, or maybe you missed the casing video, but to use a sponge you want to squeeze out just enough water to where it doesn't drip, and then you can just drag it across your leather like so, and that'll put the right amount of water on it and not too much. Okay, we're going to go this way also. I kind of have started using the spray bottle because I like it, and it does a good job. Now you can kind of tell if it's damp enough by it's a little bit bendy, but not real bendy, and this was sitting in a bag overnight, and so that's a really good way to case things so that your impressions show up really well. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use a swivel knife. Now I wanted to point out today that there's lots of different kinds of tools and swivel knives, and you know, there's just a million kind of different tools and swivel knives, and this swivel knife fits me a little better, so I'm going to be using it. Most of you might be using a craft tool swivel knife. It's a little bit short for me, so I think it would be easier for me to show you the correct way to do it with one that fits my hand just a little bit more. So we're going to use this. This is a Leather Wrangler's swivel knife that I've had and use all the time, and I really like it. Now, if you remember right, we talked about using jeweler's rouge, and you can make a jeweler's rouge strop by using some jeweler's rouge and just kind of coloring it onto a piece of cardstock like this. And don't make a big as mess as I did there, but and use it to you're gonna hold your swivel knife to where it's right at the angle that your blade's sharpened at, and you're going to do it between 5 and 10 times on this side, switch it over, and the same there. Then you'll take the dust, get it off, and get rid of it. Now, my strop that I use looks like this, and it has green rouge on it. It's a similar kind. It just happens to be what was on this, and so it goes like this. Now you can tell I've used this in quite a bit. It probably needs some more rouge put on it, but a little bit of the metal comes off on there, and it's okay. It still does its job. But okay, now we're going to I showed you this piece that I wanted to show you a little bit of how to put a design onto your leather. There's a few techniques that are important with all leathercraft of trying to get your pieces centered into the leather. And so we have I traced off a pattern here, and it's a belt pattern actually. So if you wanted to make a belt out of this, you would go like this, and then this part would come back over here, and it would just keep going and going. And so that's how you would use this as a belt pattern. We're using it today just to show you how to do this, and so we're going to use two parts of it. I put the lines on the edge here so that you can the belt, like if you were making a belt, and I want to stay about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge on that. So I'm just going to eyeball it and get it 1/4 of an inch away on the edge, and then I need to look at the space right between this end leaf, because see, this is part of this other one, so this end leaf and right here on this, so we need to go that way just a little bit, make sure it's still got our 1/4 of an inch so that it's straight with the line. We're not going to put that line in, and we got about 3/8 of an inch up here, 3/8 of an inch down here, 1/4 of an inch all the way along there. So I'm going to lay my shot bag, which this is just a little leather bag, and it's full of shot like little BBs, and it's pretty heavy, and so it holds it down for you, and that makes it so that you don't have to tape it down, and it's a bit, I think, a little better than taping it, because sometimes when you tape things that you have some trouble there. Okay, I'm going to use a tracing tool. This one is more of a stylus type tracing tool. We have many kinds of tracing tools. Some of them are a stylus type. Here is a modeling tool, which is, it's got a modeling spoon on this side and a tracing tool on this side, and you would use it like this. Okay, so that's one kind that's real common to use. This is a stylus, a craft tool stylus, and it's similar to mine, except mine's just a little bit longer, and so that's what I'm using today. So I'm going to always hold it down with my left hand and then follow the lines. Try to be really exact on your lines, because if you're off on your lines, everything's going to be off. And so it's really important to stay on with your lines. The good thing about tracing your lines on and then swivel knifing is the swivel knife is going to put the permanent cut into it, and if you need to change the pattern that you traced on, you can a little bit without causing real issues. When things get really tight here, sometimes it's really hard to get it on just right, and sometimes it's actually easier to get it on with your swivel knife. Okay, so keep track of where you've been. I kind of started back here, but because I've been talking, I can't remember if I did this one, but yeah, I did. But notice how I really held on tight to this when I looked, so that I didn't let go and get it off. You know, and every once in a while, check and make sure. See, we're still staying right. It's staying right where it's supposed to. And so, think about your line and where it's supposed to be. Try to stay right on your line. If you get off of it a little bit, we can fix it before you start swivel knifing, probably. And so you notice that when we make these leaves, we start out with this little line, make the curve, come up, and then we come right back into that line. Don't make an X right there, just make it come in really right into the cut or really close. And don't make an X as you get into here either. That's the control that you want to get on your swivel knife. Okay, let's look and see. Remember, we got this down here. We're gonna take a look and see if we got all the lines that we want. It looks like we're there. They all look there. So, is it safe to take it off? I think so. So let's take it off. Ta-da! There's one side of it. Then we want the other side. So what are we gonna do? This is a belt design, and this is one, and then this is the other part of the design. So we're just going to use this other one. We're going to put it on just exactly like we did the first side. And so we want the same space here at the top. Okay, we want 1/4 of an inch about along the side, and we want about 3/8 of an inch down here. So that looks like it's pretty well in the middle. Okay, we're then again going to put this on there, and I'll trace this on and be back with you. Okay, I traced the other side on, and while I was tracing, I was thinking about these little spaces in here are real important to try to keep them not let those lines touch each other. That little space is real important. It's spaced there because that's what kind of builds the flower. So be careful not to get them off. Your tracing lines are real important that way. Okay, and now I'm doing everything right-handed, but do remember that if you're left-handed, you just do it the opposite, of course. You're going to be, where I'm holding my tracing tool with the right hand and doing it this way, you're going to do the opposite. So you're used to changing that anyway, right? If you're left-handed. So anyway, let's give this just a little drink of water. We're not going to give it too much, just a little, because it's pretty good. Now sometimes, later on we'll probably notice this more, but it'll start drying out more on the edge than in the middle. So when we dampen it, we'll just want to dampen the edges, not the middle. Okay? Alright. So our swivel knife, and in our carving, we kind of learned how to hold our swivel knife. This is the swivel part of it. You're going to use your middle finger and your thumb to swivel that. You're going to try to keep the yoke of your swivel knife right here in this first kind of in this the joint here. If you get it here, it's like you're too tight in there and can't get very much leverage and can't see what you're doing. I always use this third finger here. I prop it on my little finger like this, and kind of use this to guide a little bit too. And I usually, when I'm doing a line like this, I go ahead and start on a curve like so. So I'm gonna go on a curve like this and come toward myself and press it in. And how hard you press it, you're gonna have to experiment and just learn that. But you want to get it about a third or a fourth or a third of the way through the leather, depending on what thickness your leather is. Okay, so we came like that. Now we're gonna come on this line, and then we're gonna. You always need to be able to see where you're going. So hold your leather to where you can see where you're going. Put that far side point into the leather and pull it around, and see how that I can swivel that this here to make it turn. I know it looks kind of easy, but until you get practiced up, it is kind of difficult to get it to do exactly what you want it to. If you can kind of remember to keep your finger right there, just keep going on, and make sure that you have it placed where you can see what you're doing. It always works best to try to go toward yourself. When we get to doing the rows, you'll see that isn't always possible, because sometimes it's a little harder. Now there I kind of got off the line, so I'm just going to fix this line to where it fixed it, or doesn't look like I traced it on very good, did I? I probably should have gone over my tracing and made sure that it was good. Okay, now we're going to do the rows. The rows is just a little bit harder than these leaves because we can just go along. But so that you're not spending a lot of time twisting and turning your leather, sometimes you can go ahead and do several things that you can reach with your hand in one position. So see, I'm really uncomfortable right there, and but since I only had 1/8 of an inch left to do it, I went ahead and finished it. But if your hand is uncomfortable, you should just move it. Okay, so I only went to there because I know if I went like this, I can do that good sometimes and I can't sometimes. So it'd be better if I took my time and see how I'm going to go there, and then come back over here and turn this to get this part right here, so I can see what I'm doing. That way I can get a nicer round edge on it, or corner. Okay, so then you can turn it, and I can't see what I'm doing, so I better turn it, and fit it in real exact so that it looks really nice that way. And the good thing about swivel knifing over tracing it on is at least you can see what lines you've missed. And if it gets uncomfortable, just make sure that you turn your leather and get comfortable. Sometimes if you're doing some projects, like a belt sometimes is hard because it's hard to get it turned and turned and turned. So the best way is to do everything that you can reach from one side and then turn it and get everything you can reach from the other side. Like right here, I would do all of these outside lines. This is kind of a hard one, whatever way you look at it. Okay, and then turn it and do some of your other lines. Oops. Now it's going to take you a while to get where your hand is doing what you tell it to. So don't get frustrated. Just practice a little bit, and it's these kind of cuts right here that are on this pattern actually are really good cuts to practice on, because once you've made some of these cuts, everything else looks easy, right? Let's see. Maybe I missed a line. This little thing comes through here. Or maybe it just... The good thing is we can kind of make it do what we want it to. That's what happens when you... Maybe I didn't have that one other little line on. We're just going to make it this way. Okay. And then all right, did we get them all? Oh, I think I see where that other line is on here. There's a little round thing right there that I didn't see very good. Okay, so now what we're going to do, I'll come back and swivel knife this in a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and bevel on this. Now, normally we would bevel all around on the outside of these things on a regular carving, but since this is inverted or silhouette, we want the inside squished out, so we're going to bevel to the inside. So we're going to bevel like so to the inside. Okay, always have the line that you're putting your tool in, always have that facing you, and so that you get it in there correctly. Okay, and turn it to where you can see where you're putting your tool. Now remember, your tool is shaped like this, so the straight edge goes along the line, and then it bevels off the other part, like so. Okay, now what I usually do is I move this about 3/4 of a mark at a time, or 3/4 of the distance of the end of the tool, and you can see there's little marks, so you're going to need to come back and lightly just move it about a half a space at a time, and to smooth that up, because you want it really nice and smooth. There. So then you can see, you get the effect of that you see on the inside, and you can kind of see on this one how this side is just beveled, and many times I've left it just like that, and it makes a nice design just like that. But we're also gonna do the backgrounding to mat it down. I kind of, when I'm beveling, I break the trail, so to speak, and one at a time kind of hit it, and then when I come back I just slide it along here and tap it to smooth it. A lot of people, this is a walking tool, and so a lot of people will walk it like this the whole time, but when you're first learning, it is a little easier to not hit. I don't know, it's harder to walk it right away. Okay, and then you can learn to walk it later, but first get it put where you want it, get the part smushed down that you need to get smushed down, and then make it smooth. Do you notice I'm not hitting all that hard? Maybe you can't even see what I'm doing there. I'm trying to make it where you can see it, and sometimes then I can't see it, and then I hit it wrong. But now I did want to show you, I'm using a shorter mallet like this, and a lot of times there's mallets like this that have a longer handle, and a lot of times I'll hold it up here like this, or if you're really whacking on something, you can hold it back down here and get a little more deeper hit with it, or like this. But mallets are another thing, just like tools. There's 1.5 million of different brands and kinds, and this one happens to be a Berry King mallet, and it's a 16-ounce one, which is 1 pound, and it makes it, it's just the right weight for me. I like it a lot. So you'll find tools that you really like, and you'll find tools that you don't like. So you over time you figure out what you want. So it's always a good idea to start out with tools that aren't the most expensive, and then you figure out what you like and what you want. And you notice when we're smoothing the lines up, we don't hit them really hard. We just barely tap them. Now this leather is some that I had cased for overnight, and I can tell you it is tooling much nicer than this that I didn't have cased overnight. So it's important if you when you have a project that you're really wanting it to turn out nice, to maybe case it overnight, and don't get it so sopping wet. And if you do get it too wet, give yourself time to let it dry back to the dampness that you want to tool. You want it damp, not real wet. Because if it were really wet, when we get especially to the backgrounding part, when you background something that's really wet, it almost the backgrounding just doesn't, it gets kind of rubbery, and it doesn't stay matted down like it's supposed to. And sometimes when it's all said and done, it'll get kind of a little you notice that we're just taking little tiny things right here, but your backgrounding will turn kind of a whitish color if it's too wet. So backgrounding is a thing that you're not going to do with very wet leather. Nor beveling. You can trace, if your leather's a little too wet, you can trace a design on probably and be okay. But most of the other steps, you should just take your time and let it dry out a little bit. And if you're re-wetting it, just be real careful. Okay, sometimes on these little tiny spots, if they're, you just need to be real careful with them. Sometimes you need to have a smaller beveler, and bevelers come in all sorts of sizes. So sometimes people have several sizes of bevelers, and so you can use them accordingly. I used to always think, well, why would they have such a so many different sizes of bevelers? But on a long straight line, it might be handy to have a wide beveler that went a little faster, And now I kind of get it now, because it'll save you some time on, if you have a long line, you can use a long beveler, and this size seems to work good for this this pattern, and it's called a B201, I believe, and it's just about like 3/8 of wide. And there's all sorts of different kinds of tools also. a lot of different people make tools, different companies, and so, you know, it's kind of, everybody gets their tools that they like the best. I started out with craft tools, and a lot of people do because they're pretty easy to find at Tandy Leather. Now I have some tools that are a little bit, tools that I like a little bit better, that have like this backgrounder, or I mean beveler, is a checked beveler, but it has a really fine check, and I like a really fine check. I don't want a coarse check. I kind of, you can't hardly tell it's checked, and I like that. I used to always use smooth bevelers, and they did a good job, but then I found out I kind of like these checked ones better, that have just a little tiny check. Okay. You know, I'm using my finger to hold that, but if I just would have done that, it would have probably been a little easier. That holds it into place a little bit better. And now, being we're going to background this, you know, if you want to, you don't have to be quite as careful to get all of the little marks out of it. You just have to think about your project and what you're going to do with it. If you weren't going to background it, you want to get this really nice and smooth. Since you're going to background it, if you wanted to take less time on the beveling, you wouldn't have to get it really, really nice. Okay. The next step we're going to do is we're going to use the backgrounder, and I have several different kinds of background. And I used one kind here, but that backgrounder didn't have a real sharp point on it. And my craft tool backgrounder that I've used for 100 years is nice because it's a good shape. So we're going to use it. And you notice that it has a point and a rounded part on the back of it. And so use the pointed part in the points of things, and the rounded part in the, so see, I've put this in the point, and then I'm just going to kind of go along the edge, and well, I'm going to have to do it from this way, even though my finger gets in the way. And to smooth these down, you just barely tap them. So you could come along and in the points of each of these, to save a little bit of time, you could come in and do those points first, and the point back here too. I tend to like to do everything at once, so that when I leave that place, I'm done with it, because sometimes I don't get back to it in time. And so see, I like to do them one at a time. I leave one at a time, and so when you go back to smooth it, you're just not gonna hit it real hard, but you do need to hit it hard enough. Backgrounding is one of those tools where you need a nice sharp hit. I see a little mark right there. I just want to, yeah, that fixed it. And sometimes it just takes just a little tiny tap. Okay? Larger areas are a little trickier. You know, after you've beveled this, sometimes you can kind of slide it in against the edge Now, a lot of people say you don't need to bevel on the inside. You just go ahead and background it. But I can tell you that if you try that, you'll find that it's a little hard when you're a beginner to get in there very good, and you go over your line a lot. I find it easier, and I think it makes your pattern, your carving, have more depth if you go ahead and bevel before you background. Okay, now we're getting close to these big spots, and so what I usually do is, of course, you're going to point it in, and then use the side of your tool to kind of go along. And do you notice how we're kind of going along the edge? Okay, and then we're gonna kind of mat that down, and you see there how it's a little rough looking. So we were going like this, so kind of turn it a little bit and use a light tap, and you can kind of smooth it and blend all those little marks that were shown before in. That's how you have to do on bigger areas to get them nice and smooth. We're going to get this little stem before I forget it. Okay, it just goes up a ways, and then on a silhouette carving, sometimes your stems are like this; they're just a line, and that's, you don't background, bevel, or anything on some of those that are just a line. Your line is it. It's a decorative line. Okay, see how we're kind of getting the point done, and then going around the side, trying to make sure we can see what we're doing. I can't really see that very good, but I don't want to turn it because I want you to see it. So tell me if I'm hitting it wrong. I realize you're not there, but okay, and just kind of then smooth it up a little bit. This is a step that you do not want to do with it really super wet. Whoop, just about messed that up. You've got to put the point into the point. Okay, and you notice I'm not like whack, not walloping on it. I'm just lightly kind of hitting it, and now if you go over your edge and just fix it up the best you can. Sometimes you can just hit, or just make it a little bigger or something, and still make it look okay if you make a boo-boo there. But the important thing is make your leather to where you can see what you're doing. Now I'm just hoping that I don't mess it up too much, because I can't always see real good what I'm doing here, because I would like to leave it to where you can see. And when you're working on it, you just turn it to wherever you can see the best. Sometimes you miss your tool like that. And this is a tool that you need to hold straight up and down, because if you get the tip in, sometimes you get a big point in there. Okay, now on these parts that are little tiny, sometimes what I do is I use the point. And of course you're going to use the point in here where it says point, of course, And so use the point there on those. am going to turn this so that I can use the point on this side too, because I'm going to see how I'm tipping it, and I'm kind of having to do all of it with just the point, because it's a really small space. But it looks okay because you're just backgrounding it, and so it gives the effect that you wanted in the first place. Okay, so we have that backgrounded. Now I'll go ahead and bevel this side so that we can see the difference. Actually, we can see the difference on this one, can't we? So I guess we don't really need to. Trying to think of the important things to remember. Make sure that you cut all your lines. Make sure that they're all beveled before you start backgrounding. Okay, and so this is silhouette carving, because you're making a silhouette out of it. A couple of times what I've done here is I came in here later on when you can start using color, and like paint a little bit of light red in here, in those places there, and a little green here, and then I antiqued over it, and it looked pretty cool. And I did that on this. You could do it here too. This it just has a different look than if you did it on here. Okay, and so that's the rose.